What is up, everyone? I'm Taylor Shelton, and this is Coffee with a Beta Reviewer. I'm your friendly neighborhood coffee snob, and today, folks, is a very special episode as I got to talk with the guys from the MidwesterNerds. So, not all of them were able to be part of it, but one of the new additions to their podcast got to be part of this, and so. With introductions out of the way, let's get started with today's video as we are talking about the future of Marvel Cinematic Universe. Again, thank you so much, everyone, for watching this video. And this is my friends from the MidwesterNerds. And Brian and Kyle, how about you just tell everyone where they can find you and just kind of like your whole deal.
So we are the MidwesterNerds Podcast. MidwesterNerds, that's MidwesterNerds. If you want to find us, they can reach us at MidwesterNerds on Twitter and Instagram. We are the MidwesterNerds Podcast on Facebook. Or if you want to send us an email, you can reach us at midwesternerds@gmail.com. If you're looking to listen to the show, you can find us pretty much anywhere you can find podcasts.
Well, that's awesome. Well, you guys, thank you so much. And I know that Chad is not with us right now because he's not feeling that well, but Kyle, you're in to fill in for him. So I just wanted to start off with this video because we are talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Well, pretty much anything that is Marvel that's coming out within this year. So I thought what would be a good segue into this is the trailer for Doctor Strange 2, the Multiverse of Madness. So what was your initial reaction to this trailer?
Ryan, you want to start it off?
All of these trailers have really been piquing my interest, piquing my curiosity more and more. All the fan theories are coming out with all of the different footage that we have too. Is Mephisto going to be in this one finally? Who knows? But yeah, all the different theories of is that, and even just like the leaks that have been coming out too, like is Tom Cruise going to be a Tony Stark in this? Is that the superior Iron Man, or is that Monica Rambeau's Captain Marvel? Is this the Doctor Strange that we saw in What If, or is this a different one, the evil one? There's been a couple other different ones too, and what's gonna happen with Wanda in this movie is also a big question. The most exciting thing about this last trailer that came out though would have to be the voice that we heard when Doctor Strange is on trial. No doubt in my mind, I was like, oh my gosh, that is Patrick Stewart. That is Professor Xavier. So just hearing, like, we knew all of these other characters, all these other variations of characters were going to be in it, but just hearing him really, really beefs up the excitement that's coming into this now. And again, just feeds the fan theory fire even more.
Yeah, especially after everything that happened in No Way Home. I mean, now that just absolutely unloads the floodgates of what we can theorize as fans and what we can expect going forward. I mean, the Professor Xavier thing was that perfect thing. That was the perfect thing to put in the trailer and say, like, okay, a lot of us fans kind of figured this was going to happen. Now they're confirming it. Now we can even further speculate on what's going to happen. Is there going to be Mr. Fantastic? Was that him sitting to the left of it and at the chair? Are we going to get Wade Wilson that they've been teasing? Deadpool and Ryan Reynolds has been teasing being in the MCU. Are we finally going to get that? Like, there's just so many things. The Tony Stark thing is super interesting. I didn't even know about all this stuff. Tom Cruise about until today when I was doing deep dives on all this trailer stuff. I think there's so many things that can go into it. They tease just enough. They show just the right frames of different characters. The poster itself, I mean, people have spent hours diving in on the poster and the shattered glass and what they might be able to find in the reflections of the shattered glass, and trying to, like, we already saw what looks to be Captain. Why can't I think? That from What If? Rogers.
Captain Carter.
Captain Carter.
Okay, yeah, Captain Carter.
I was gonna say like Captain Britain or something. Like that doesn't sound right.
Well, it should be Captain Britain.
Right,
yeah, it should
Let's
be.
be
Yeah.
real. We talked
Right.
about this a little bit in our last episode of Midwestern Nerds when we were talking about all the Marvel projects that came out last year, the 9 MCU TV shows, movies that came out, and that was one of the conversations during the What If segment, was that they should have just pulled the trigger and called her Captain Britain. She is Captain Britain, but gotta keep it Captain Carter, I guess, for some reason or another.
Yeah, I don't know why they decided to do that, but it's clearly Captain Britain. Like, that's something that is definitely in the comic books. But you know what? I think there's just something about Captain Carter that just rolls on the tongue a little bit better, I think. So maybe that's the reason why that they decided to do that, because I think when you think of Captain America, you're going like Steve Rogers, like who else? And so like, yeah, I think Captain Carter just sounds a lot better. But just with everything that you just said, it just makes me very excited, especially with the prospect that we're going to see. I'm sorry, not Ian McKellen, Patrick Stewart. Is that was clearly his voice. Like, it just kind of makes you wonder, like, could this be another variation of Xavier? So like maybe it not be exactly the Charles Xavier from the X-Men universe that we all know and love from the early 2000s to the early 2010s, but maybe this is just another variation. Maybe this could be like Galactic Xavier for all we know. But I think that would just make a lot of sense, that maybe like whoever is like the more superior version of that particular character, those people might be like the ultimate Illuminati, because that is where they are very into this whole thing. And so like, yeah, like you said, I think there's going to be like a higher power Reed Richards, which potentially could be John Krasinski. That could be cool. And also like the superior Iron Man, which might be Tom Cruise, Black Widow by Emily Blunt. Like, it just makes me a little bit excited that we might get to see a universe that has all the originally meant to be actors for their original roles. Like, I think that's a much bigger possibility now. But altogether, I just really loved what this trailer did. And do you think that the Mordo that we saw in the trailer is the same Mordo from the first Doctor Strange?
I've seen people talking about that and how it could potentially be a different Mordo, but I would have to assume, because of it's the sequel to Doctor Strange, I would have to assume, just with how he left in the first movie, I would have to think that that's the same guy. He's coming back. He is starting to he somehow worked his way up, and now he is either a part of that Illuminati or he's an enforcer for them. Like I think he is the one that brings in Strange. I think it's I want to say it's the same guy. I think it would be too, I don't know if it would make too much sense if it was a different one. You know what I mean? I think it makes a lot of sense. The way he left in the first one is really cool. But I'm very excited for a lot of the things that they set up with Scarlet Witch. And like, I think there's so many different story arcs and potential, like, for different things that she's going to be able to do. Is she going to be the overarching bad guy in all of this? We've seen so many different potential baddies in this whole movie, but like there are scenes where it kind of looks like, especially, I love how the trailer that they showed during the Super Bowl was slightly different. There were different shots than the actual trailer that they released, the second trailer. But there's different shots of Scarlet Witch breaking into what we would assume, whatever Illuminati headquarters, whatever. There's the scene with Scarlet Witch meeting herself, and there's this whole thing, just her trying to find her kids, whether or not that's going to drive her absolutely crazy and try to destroy everything, or if that's going to drive her to take down the Illuminati. Like, there's going to be so many. I'm just so interested to see where they go with her, and it's not even her movie. I'm super pumped for that.
Yeah, it just kind of makes you wonder, kind of like, what is her place in this movie, because like she's definitely like one of the main characters in this movie. I mean, the way I see it is that instead of her going no more mutants, because like the House of M story is like one of the most revered X-Men stories out there, but I kind of feel like that she's going to be all like, more mutants. So maybe that this will be like the full-on driving force that is going to lead us into knowing more mutants in the future films. But it's kind of hard to tell whether if she's going to be the villain or maybe like a semi-villain, because they are veering towards that she might snap in this one. I mean, she did snap a little bit in WandaVision, but it just kind of makes you wonder.
I think the thing about this trailer is that I have very similar feelings about this trailer that I did not only during or before the movie, but then like after as well with Spider-Man No Way Home, where they're not showing us like, they're showing us like a very fine like sliver, a very tiny decimal fraction of this movie. And I think it's going to have a lot more than people are anticipating. I think it's that a lot more characters and people are going to be in this movie affecting the storyline. It's one of those movies where they've shown us enough to get us excited, but I still have no idea really what's going on in this movie. I just know characters that I recognize not only from the MCU, but just characters from the comics as well. And I can maybe join in like the tinfoil hat fans out there that are trying to figure out this movie before they see it. But I think it just like Spider-Man No Way Home, where they showed us what we thought was a lot in that trailer. But then after you saw the movie, it was like they barely showed us anything in those trailers. And with this one, with these last few trailers being like, I've seen a lot, but I really haven't seen a lot, tells me that this movie is going to be massive.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And just kind of like reflecting on what you said is that you're absolutely right, because in Spider-Man No Way Home, they showed very vague things about the movie. Like when I first saw that trailer, it's all like, oh, it's all the villains from the previous films. And then it's making me go like, I really hope the other Spider-Mans are going to be in this, because if these villains are in there, then these heroes have to be in there as well. But they were just around the bush and just with all the leaks that were coming out. But yeah, like they're just bringing out small little Easter eggs and a little bit of like references of something that probably came before. And so like, do you think that Doctor Strange is going to have a much bigger consequence for his actions in this one?
I kind of feel like at least for this phase 4, I feel like is Doctor Strange's phase, because I feel like I think him and Wanda are going to have the biggest impacts on the MCU. And we've already seen it with Wanda and WandaVision. Doctor Strange, we've seen not only in Spider-Man No Way Home, but even Wong and Shang-Chi and the different things that they've all been showing up in. The fact that it's the multiverse of madness, which I feel like it's just going to blow the doors wide open, where anything and everything could be possibly leaking into our world, even possibly after this movie. And it's all going to be due to Doctor Strange and this section of the MCU. And even if let's say everyone turns on Doctor Strange because of his actions here and they hold him responsible, characters from this franchise in this universe are going to have to clean up his mess in some way, shape, or form. Yeah. So I feel like at least for this phase of the MCU, it could be even going forward, but especially this phase, this is definitely the Doctor Strange phase.
Well, and I think you brought up a good point too, with it being Doctor Strange and Wanda. Like, I think those two are, especially in this movie, but I think, like you said, for phase 4, I think they're going to be a big part, because not only have they been in a lot of the projects already back in 2021, but even Doctor Strange was, it was kind of confirmed in canon that the commercials in WandaVision were like Doctor Strange trying to reach Wanda. We already know they have that connection. That connection's going to be explained and like gone into depth in this movie. That's why I think there's scope for Wanda to be a bad, like one of the villains of the movie, but then potentially leaves room for redemption arc towards the end of the movie as well. Maybe she's the one who helps Doctor Strange clean up the big mess or whatever. Maybe it's just her. Maybe it's just her using the magic. There's just so many things that can go into those two because of the connection that they've established already.
It could even just be the start of the mess.
Yeah.
I don't, as much as I would fanboy over it, I don't think Wanda is gonna flat out say like more mutants, because mutants really haven't been established yet. I think they're going to be established in this movie, especially since we know that at least one Professor X in some way, shape, or form is going to be in this movie.
Yeah.
I think she's going to discover them in this movie. I think she's going to be able to relate to them, since I don't think she clearly knows how she's gotten her powers yet either. I know that they've kind of dipped their toes into that origin story of hers here and there, not only in Age of Ultron, but also WandaVision itself. But I think she's going to be the catalyst that opens that door, whether it's on purpose or by accident. And I feel like that's why I feel like it's both her and Doctor Strange, their phase in the MCU, because I think both of them are going to be held responsible in some way, shape, or form. And if Wanda brings all these mutants in, like, what does that do to a somewhat normal world of, we've got like one person with powers here and there for all of these good superpowered people to come up and stop, and now having like all of these people that have powers coming into this kind of normal world. And then, if Wanda takes responsibility for all these people coming in, is she going to try to oppose them? Is she going to join them? Is she going to lead them? All of these questions I feel like are going to come out of this movie.
Yeah. And so I just have one last question to you guys, is that there's actually one in particular scene that just seems a little bit interesting, is that like, I'm sure you guys have seen What If, right?
Yes.
So just the fact is that we've already seen zombie Doctor Strange. We've also seen superior evil Doctor Strange, and you even see zombie Wanda. So, and a lot of people are saying that What If is somehow now really part of the MCU, and it just kind of makes you go like, what elements from What If is going to come into this movie? But more so in kind of like, does this mean that we might be able to like see Elseworlds movies from here on out?
Well, I think that it was a cool little thing that I didn't even notice when I initially watched the trailer was at one point there was some explosion in the background or whatever, and you can kind of see reality tearing, and there was an animated, almost like an animated background, like an animated show, like almost just like a living room or something, kind of ripping through that reality. I saw someone saying that could potentially be like that's their bridge to the animated series, to What If. That's where Captain Carter comes in. That's where potentially the zombies. I saw those shots too. I'm very interested to see what those are going to be in the movie, because as we know, the zombie Strange got eaten by ants, but zombie Wanda was still out there. So it's going to be interesting how that is actually connected. But I think there's scope to also bring in those, because we know there's more animated things coming out this year as well, so that there's scope for it to actually make those animated shows somewhat canon in the MCU.
I wouldn't be surprised, and I'm almost expecting Michael B. Jordan coming back to the MCU live action as Killmonger and not dying this time. I feel like everyone was almost a little disappointed that his character didn't make it out of Black Panther alive, and the fact that that character had so much focus in What If and wasn't that different than the Killmonger that we saw in the actual movie, other than the fact that maybe
that's true,
rose to higher power and got his hands on different ways to do things than the previous Killmonger. I think he's gonna find, even if he doesn't get that much screen time in this movie, I think they're going to deliberately show him in this movie and show him staying in this world.
I'm sure. Have you guys seen some of the pictures that has Chris Hemsworth along with Taika Waititi?
Yeah, for Thor: Love and Thunder.
Yeah, like if you look at Chris Hemsworth, he got beefed up.
Like he was also filming the Hulk Hogan biopic that's supposed to come out sometime soon during the filming of that movie. So I'm excited to see the jokes that connect Fat Thor from Endgame to now big bad beefy Thor in this movie, and how they're going to
I can already see Star-Lord and Thor, because we saw them kind of already arguing over who's captain of the ship or whatever. They're already going to have maybe a montage, or they're going to allude to the fact that they both were kind of self-conscious about how they were looking, and they were both just gotten a super. I could see Chris Pratt doing the same thing and getting in
for sure
wicked shape, and they're both just jacked out. That'd be awesome.
I mean, I'm not sure if you saw the newest trailer for Jurassic World, but Chris Pratt did look like he was in probably the best shape of his life. Like, in comparison, when you see him in that trailer and from Endgame, you could tell clear as day that he lost some weight, but he also beefed up as well. But the reason why I wanted to segue into kind of like the whole Thor and Guardians section, I actually wanted to get your opinion on what you think about the new Thor outfit.
I think it looks pretty similar to what we're seeing in the comics right now, which, would make sense. The thing about this movie is I kind of hope it takes itself a little more serious than Ragnarok did. I know Thor Ragnarok is a lot of people's favorite, not just Thor movie, but in their top MCU movies. And I always describe that movie as a moviegoer, I really liked that movie, but as a comic book fan, I really did not like that movie. I think things worked for that movie that worked for movies, and just when you get into the mythology and some of the story arcs and storylines that they tapped into for that movie, I don't think they were very honorable or faithful to those. And so bringing in not just Gore the God Butcher, but also bringing back Natalie Portman to play Jane Foster as Lady Thor, I really hope that they are a little more serious this time around. Don't get me wrong, Taika Waititi is a very funny guy. I really enjoy his comedy, but I just hope that it's not comedy overload like his last take in this universe was. Especially when you get into just the heaviness of the characters of Gore and of Jane Foster's Thor. I just hope that it's not just jokes the whole way through.
Yeah, I could totally see what you mean. That, like, as much as we all love Thor Ragnarok, but I could totally understand what you mean just in regards for being like a Marvel fan. Like, when you think of Thor, you think of Norse mythology, and when you hear the name Odin, Norse mythology. So, like, there is a lot of lore, there's a lot of like stories that was taken inspiration to create some of the best Thor stories that we all know from the comic books. So like I completely understand what you mean, is that like I could see how they kind of like ruined kind of like the aspect of like the magical side of the Norse mythology, especially when it comes down to like Ragnarok, because Ragnarok is like the most defining moment in Norse mythology. Is meant to be like the end of times for the Vikings. And so it just kind of makes you go like, they kind of underplayed that story beat a little bit. But yeah, I could definitely see what you mean. So you're just saying that you still want that comedic beat, but still to have kind of like this balance of comedy along with kind of like the seriousness. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Not just like with Ragnarok, how like that wasn't really taken that seriously throughout, but even just Hulk in that movie and all the Planet Hulk stuff, that's a pretty heavy and dark story. And the fact that some of the main characters from that storyline are now just like jokey punch bags for Thor and Hulk throughout the MCU. Again, if I would go into that movie without any of that background knowledge, I'd be like, yes, Korg and his little bug Meek guy they're very fun. They're very cute. Like, it's a lot of fun. But if you go into it with the comic book knowledge, which a lot of people do go into these, like not just myself, but there's a lot of nerds out there that love this stuff, which is part of what makes all these Marvel movies so big and popular. And then to see those characters that were such an impact to Hulk and his storyline in that book to just be written off as a joke was a little bit of a slap in the face. And so again, I hope this movie, I want it to be funny, but I want it to take its source material more seriously than Taika Waititi did the first time around.
But you know what? You might get your wish, because from what I heard is that this fourth Thor is supposed to be a little bit more darker. Like, it's supposed to be just as serious as No Way Home. Like, this would be like the more defining character of Thor, especially that you got Christian Bale, who is a serious method actor. So like, you know that he's going to be a great Gore the God Butcher. And when you have the name of the God Butcher, you got to take that guy serious, because when you have God Killer or God Butcher in your name, nobody wants to mess with you, because especially that I really do think that they're going to have it be more kind of like this bittersweet story where Thor is no longer going to be kind of like known as Thor. He might just go by the name of Odinson, and it will be more kind of like Odinson and Lady Thor, Jane Foster. And so, but yeah, you're absolutely right. I think there was at least one missed opportunity in Thor Ragnarok. I think in Thor Ragnarok, they had a missed opportunity that maybe somehow Hulk and Valkyrie had something of a romantic thing going on, and maybe led to like the birth of Sakaar, Hulk's son. I think that could have been interesting.
Yeah, and maybe it's just because, like Brian was saying, that they didn't really take too much of the story seriously. It really was just a comedy movie in the MCU. But I think going forward with this, I think they'll probably, like you said, with someone named the God Butcher, I think that immediately is like, okay, we are going to take a little bit of a turn. It's going to be dark. It feels like if Phase 4 of the MCU is pretty dark right now. I mean, from what we've seen of Doctor Strange and what we know of No Way Home, it does seem like it is darker before the light, so you got to, in the beginning of this new chapter of the MCU, you do kind of have to play into that dark side of it. But obviously with Taika Waititi and the Guardians of the Galaxy in there, it is still going to be comedy. Like, there is still going to be that lightheartedness. So hopefully they can find that balance, because I'm one of those people who didn't know a lot of these characters going into Ragnarok. So like, I'm one of the people who was perfectly fine with Ragnarok. But when I hear that argument, it's like, okay, yeah, I can completely understand with Ragnarok itself, like the event being downplayed, and they wanted it to happen and all this stuff. And I get the whole story behind it and all that, but I think there's a lot of room for character development, character changes, a lot of really cool storytelling, and setting up a third Guardians movie. I'm very excited for this.
Yeah, and so that I just like to segue into another movie that I would like to have the chance to talk to you guys about, and that is Morbius. And that apparently Morbius is the very next Marvel movie that's coming out. It's supposed to come out on April Fool's Day, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on what you think this movie is going to be all about, because it looks like that, because we already know that the multiverse is open, and just the fact that we got Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire now part of the MCU. Like, if you think about it, the original Spider-Man is the very first movie within the MCU. I just find that a little bit funny, but like when you look at this Morbius trailer, there are several references to Spider-Man. Like in the background, you see Tobey Maguire's outfit of Spider-Man, but then you see the Vulture, but then you see Oscorp. The Oscorp logo is actually the same as Andrew Garfield's Oscorp. So what universe do you think this Morbius is in? Oh, and he also mentions Venom. And so I'm all like, could this be Andrew Garfield's universe?
That's what it feels like to me, and I that's what I want out of it. That's what I would like to see, because I do eventually. We talked about this on an earlier episode. I want to see this darker side that Andrew Garfield alluded to in No Way Home, of what happened after the Gwen Stacy thing. Like, we know that it kind of turned out better a year later, but I think that he obviously alluded to he stopped pulling his punches. So there is something there is something there. Especially I think they're trying to maybe retcon the fact. I think they're trying to force Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man and Tom Hardy's Venom into the same universe too. Potentially, I'm not sure, but that would again fit in with the Morbius movie. I'm curious, because I don't know a lot of Morbius, but there's obviously been references to vampires in the MCU and Eternals. They reference now I can't remember the name, but there's a reference. Yeah, well, yeah, Blade, obviously, yeah. One of the characters was joking that he was trying to stab him in the heart because he thought it was a vampire or something.
Right.
So I'm very curious to see, because I don't know a lot about this. So I'm very curious to learn about it. I'm very curious to see the movie. It looks super horror film, which I'm very into good horror films. So this is all meshing into something I'm extremely interested in, especially if they start tying it into at least one of the Spider-Man universes.
Yep. Actually, as a matter of fact, what you just said, that also reminds me just the fact that the guy that is directing Doctor Strange 2 is actually originally a horror movie film director, Sam Raimi. Not to mention that he also created the original Spider-Man series. So like, I'm just really happy that Disney/Marvel Studios is kind of like going into like a new realm when it comes down to like movie making, because they said that Doctor Strange 2 is meant to be kind of like this Marvelized version of a horror film, and just the fact that it's being directed by the Evil Dead guy. So like, I'm very happy that they're going to go that route, and yeah, maybe they're going to do some horror stuff within Morbius. And overall, I'm just really I'm not as excited for Morbius, but I'm still intrigued. I think that's the best way to put it.
I can be the negative Nancy here to say I don't care about Morbius. I don't care about that movie. I don't really think or consider this Morbius movie to be like a quote unquote MCU movie. Is it a Marvel movie? Yes, but it's still like Sony's Marvel. I feel like Marvel's the big brother that's like, hey, we want to play football, but I don't own a football. My little brother does, so we'll be nice to him so we can play with his toys and do what we want to do with it. Where it's like, yeah, like you're with us, but like you're not really with us. Just because so far, unless Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios is there to hold their hand, I still don't have faith in Sony. I don't like their take or what they've done with Venom in his 2 solo movies. So I'm not really excited at all for this Morbius movie. He's like the one villain where I'm like, you picked this guy, like this dude doesn't need a movie. There's a lot of villains and like Spider-Man characters that they're like, we're gonna make movies off of these guys, and I'm like,
Yeah.
why? Like, unless they're there to fight Spider-Man, like they don't need to take up the full screen time for me. It's cool to see Michael Keaton in there. It's gonna be cool to see Matt Smith, me being a Doctor Who fan, to see him in there. Tyrese from the Fast and Furious movies, I'm like, quit trying to play a serious detective, dude. Like you're not that serious guy. To me, I think I'll probably wait until this is out, like on Redbox, to watch this movie, unless after opening weekend people are like, oh my gosh, this happened that tied into this, like they did with Venom Let There Be Carnage. And even that post-credit scene, I was like, I came to this movie for that, because that was the main reason I went, knowing that movie was going to be what it was. And I wasn't a fan of the first movie, I wasn't a fan of that second movie. And so at this point, like I've got such a foul taste in my mouth from what Sony does with their stuff when the MCU studios and when Kevin Feige aren't there to be like, this is how you play with these toys, like constantly holding their hand through it. Unless they tell me this is an MCU movie because of this reason, that reason, and that reason, and it's important to watch it, I'm probably going to pass on it until I can watch it for free or almost free.
Why wouldn't you just let Jared Leto be a comic book character? That's all he wants to do. He may not be that good at it apparently, but
Kyle, if you want me to see Morbius, Kyle, you're just gonna have to take me and pay for my movie ticket.
All right, there you go. But you know what? Yeah, I could definitely see what you mean, is that like I think Jared Leto really wants to have like a staple within the comic book universe. Like, he was not good as the Joker, but you know what? I will give him one thing. I think he was a better Joker in Zack Snyder's Justice League. It was a very small moment, but I feel like it was way better than the version that he did back in 2016. But just the fact that he's Morbius, but yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, I really don't think Morbius is a rich enough a character to have a whole movie. Like, if they were to do like some sort of like a Sinister Six lead ups thing, I think they would do a lot better and maybe have like a Sinister Six of like each character in like a Disney Plus show. So maybe like there could be like a couple episodes that's about this one character, and then the other would be like the next character. Like, I could definitely see like separate stories within a Disney Plus TV show, and then they all meet together at the very climax, and then they become kind of like their own version of the Suicide Squad in the MCU. But yeah, like Morbius, I'm a little bit iffy on it as well, but I'm still intrigued just because of like some of these little small little things that is making me go like, is this part of the MCU? But I think that's the only reason why. But
and I think they know that too. I really do. That's why like every trailer that they've released, Michael Keaton has been shown in there at some point in time. That picture of Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man in the background on the wall, that's always in there. The fact that this trailer ends with the tagline where he's like, I'm Venom, just kidding, I'm Dr. whatever my name is, Morbius. Like, to me, I will say at this point in time, you won't hear me complaining about how faithful they are with the character, because when I see all the Morbius trailers, I feel the exact same way when I see like a new limited series in the comics with Morbius, or when he shows up in Spider-Man. It's like, oh, cool, he's here. Like, he's here to fill a gap until we get to something bigger and better. Which
Yeah.
At this point in time, that's kind of how this movie feels. Like it's coming out in April. Doctor Strange comes out in May, and Moon Knight, which we haven't even talked about yet, that comes out at the end of March. So
March, yeah.
So
And,
you got a month where not a whole lot's going on Marvel wise. So okay, we'll throw in Morbius just to wet the palate.
Right. But yeah, that was the next thing I wanted to ask you guys is I know that you've seen the trailer for Moon Knight. And so overall, what do you think about this one? Because this one looks like it could be something very interesting. Because for one thing is that if you're a comic book person, like to the point that you know all the specifics of every single superhero within the Marvel universe, but like, do you think that maybe Moon Knight's daggers, they might not be adamantium, but could they be vibranium? And not to mention that like vibranium is like the only relative metal within the MCU at this point. So I wouldn't be surprised if that maybe vibranium is going to become like the daggers, and maybe like, especially, okay, here we go. What do you think of the costume? Because for one thing, there were some people that were kind of like going, we're not really digging this because it reminds us too much of the Mummy. But I'm here to say is that Moon Knight is based on an Egyptian god of the moon. And so it kind of makes sense that he would look like the Mummy. But what do you think about the costume?
I like the costume. I mean, I don't know. Again, this one's one that I'm not familiar with from the comics, at least. But I like the way it looks. It drew my attention for sure, and I love Oscar Isaac too. I think he's going to be awesome in this. Already in the trailers, he looks like he's just killing it in that role. I'm so excited to see, because it's so interesting from what I've heard. Like I said, it would be interesting. I know that with the addition of the Black Knight sword and blade, they could be maybe adding new metals or introducing new stuff, making them canon as well. But I could see them maybe sticking with vibranium, but I'm not. Again, that one I'm not too familiar on. But I am very, very excited for the show.
Yeah, because with Moon Knight's lore, his crescent daggers are actually in the comic books. They're actually made out of adamantium, but adamantium was never introduced into the MCU because it was Marvel product. But I could probably see them making them vibranium because his daggers are technically extraterrestrial, so it would make a lot of sense for them to use another extraterrestrial metal, which is vibranium, which is very well established in the MCU. But overall, what do you think of Oscar Isaac? Like, do you think he's perfectly casted?
Oh yeah, I would say so. I've been a fan of him ever since his early appearances in movies, especially Inside Llewellyn Davis, which is Coen Brothers movie. Ever since that movie and everything he's done since, it could be a bad movie, but he's still good in it. Like, he's never disappointed me as an actor, and to see him get a tasty role like this where he gets to play multiple characters. I don't think it's a spoiler to say that. To go back to your last question though, about the costume, I would answer that question with a question of which costume. There's definitely his Crusader costume that, again, like you said, has like the Mummy references to it with like the wrappings, which I didn't even put two and two together. I was just like, oh, that's interesting that they're giving this costume more layers, but it's really cool that it looks very similar to his costume in the books. In this last trailer commercial from the Super Bowl, that shot where he's jumping down and the cape forms into the crescent moon like in the books, like that gave me a really hard nerdgasm right there. And
for sure.
And just everything that's been coming out about this show so far gets me more and more hyped for it. The point that Kevin Feige came out in interviews last week saying that this is going to be a very brutal show and we're not holding back our punches. The fact that, again, going back to the costume, not only do we get the Cape Crusader costume, but we get the Mr. White costume of him in like his full white tux suit, 3-piece suit with the mask that looks like they just ripped that right out of the comic books. Like, I'm more excited to see that one on live screen than his traditional one. But overall, yeah, I'm very excited about this, especially diving into the character and his personalities, his different personalities, and making that a main focus of it. I know little bits of Moon Knight from when he's just appeared here and there in the comics that I've read. I haven't really dove into any of his series like hardcore, but just the little bit that I do know about the character and the little bit that they've shown us so far, this is making it one of my most anticipated Marvel things to come out this year.
Yeah. In regards to what you were saying, is that like, it also reminds me that Moon Knight is essentially the Batman of Marvel. So like, not to mention that they actually gave him his actual white eyes. Like, even all the previous Batman films have never done that. So he's more Batman than Batman. It's kind of weird to say, but like, I just really love the little small touches that they did to make him more comic book accurate. But yeah, when it comes down to kind of like his costume, I really like it where it almost feels like it's a symbiotic outfit. Because like, even in the very first segment when you're seeing him kind of like putting his chest out, and then it's just kind of like just morphing onto him. But I just really like it that because in the comic books he actually had to put them on like a regular person, but I just think it's a lot more logical that they would make his outfit be more kind of like the symbiote in a way. So like, for the instance of like the character of Moon Knight, I think it's going to be very interesting to see when like Mark Spector is Mark Spector and when he becomes Moon Knight. But it's going to be very interesting to see how they're going to kind of like put in that last detail that makes Moon Knight is that it's always based on the shape of the moon in the sky, because if it's half moon or a crescent or full moon, it's all based on the shape of the moon for each night, and it's all based on a different personality. What do you think they might go with that?
The interesting thing about Moon Knight is his backstory, and even just like his early appearances in the books to his early series. There were so many different creators that had their fingers in the pie, so many cooks in that kitchen that they could really go in a multiple number of different directions with this character. Some had his powers and his strength based off of, like you said, where the moon was in the sky, at what setting the moon was at. Others were like, no, that's a load of garbage. Some were like, we're gonna dive into the more mystical side, and others were like, no, we're gonna keep this as realistic as we possibly can. I think it's gonna touch into some of those things, but I don't think it's gonna touch into all of them. I think the main focus here is going to be the journey of this character figuring out who exactly he is and coming to terms with the different personalities he has and finding a way to get them all to work together for this sole cause. As far as like powers go and all that, that's early to tell. They could really do anything, because this character was introduced in Werewolf by Night, and he was literally just a werewolf hunter is how he started off, to turning into this mercenary that's got all these different personalities that fit in a different skill set to help him be the best crime fighter and mercenary that he can possibly be. So this show could really go in a multitude of different directions. They really have the full play set to use.
Mm. And my one last question to you guys is that now that we've kind of like assembled some of the characters that is actually that is kind of like within the mystical side in the MCU, because you got Moon Knight, he's a little bit more of a mystical kind of a character, and you also got the likes of like Black Knight, who is a little bit more mystical, Doctor Strange, Wanda, but it just kind of makes me wonder that, because a lot of people didn't know this, but apparently the guy that is actually speaking in the background within the end credit scene with Jon Snow actor, the Black Knight, that he's looking at the ebony blade, but then all of a sudden he hears someone go, "Are you ready to pick that up?" That's actually Muhammad Ali, which is actually the guy that played Cottonmouth from Luke Cage, but he's Blade. So do you think we might be getting kind of like our own little ragtag team of like monster hunters together?
Yeah, it definitely seems like it. Like with the addition again, you keep looking at the addition of Vulture and Morbius, and I think there's the scope for them to add in those kind of mythical creatures. And we see some cross-dimensional things in the Doctor Strange trailer too. Can't remember the name of the monster, but the tentacle monster that he fights where he cuts the bus in half. Like there's different things coming across the multiverse. So there's obviously going to be these mythical creatures, whether it's werewolves, whether it's more vampires, there's going to be that thing. So I could see they're obviously setting that up with Blade and with the Dark Knight, I think. And I think Moon Knight's only going to fuel that even more.
I just want to leave you guys off with one more final question before we finish this video up. So each of you will get you guys will get a segment where you get to give out your own theory of what this year will look like in regards to like the multiverse itself. What do you think is going to happen?
I kind of alluded to earlier, it really seems like they're going down this dark path for a lot of these characters. I think they're going to dive into what life really is for a superhero. We saw that a lot with Peter Parker. I think Doctor Strange is going to get a lot of comeuppance, whether it's in this movie or it continues past this movie. Wanda's dealing with a lot. I mean, there's so many different characters that have to, and we know Moon Knight's going to be a dark show too. And Thor's dealing with a lot of loss and a lot of grieving. There's just going to be so many things. It's going to be a really big buildup, I think, to what's going to end up being a really exciting phase 5. But that's my kind of prediction, is that it's just going to continue being dark, which I think a lot of Marvel fans may. I could see them getting tired of, because that is maybe one criticism of the DC universe, where the people say that DC is too dark sometimes. But I think if Marvel handles this correctly, I think this could be a really good build up to like a lot of good redemption arcs, a lot of really good story building.
Awesome. What do you think, Brian?
I think this year especially is going to be the start of the new norm going forward. I think a lot of things are going to come to a climax here, or it's going to feel like it, but it's really going to be the start of the full expansion of this universe. I don't think we're going to get like Avengers teaming up anytime soon, but we are going to get these characters interacting in many different ways. We're going to get all the possibilities that are just going to explode right in front of us. And while I feel like they're going to make it seem like things are going to be wrapped up, they're also going to leave the clues and hints that like anything is still possible. I don't think that, you know, after Doctor Strange, like it's going to be, I think it's going to wrap up kind of similar to how like No Way Home did, where it was like, oh, it's opening, it's coming. And they're going to like find a way to where they think they're going to stop it, but it's really just gonna like blow the doors wide open to anything being possible. I don't think you almost have to clean it up in some way. Like you can't just have it be like all these universes are like coexisting at the same time. There's got to be like some form of like, hey, there was this problem, but we fixed it. But there's also got to be like leaks and leftovers that could open the doors for anything to be possible. So long answer short, I guess this is the start of the amazing future for the Marvel universe going forward.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for being part of this. And how about you just do another reminder of where people can find you? And I just also want to say thank you so much for watching this video. And I'm sure you guys know that in a few parts of our conversation that I'm going to have some clips that is going to be like part of our discussion. So like our faces is going to be blocked by some of the clips from like the movies that we're talking about, the TV shows that we're talking about. But overall is that like, I really enjoy just the fact that I kind of kickstarted my channel with you guys. And it was such a real treat that you've been part of it. And where I am right now, I think it's just absolutely amazing that like it's almost been 2 years since I started this channel. And in regards to just kind of like everything that is MCU, the MCU is a gem within Disney. Like altogether, I really think that they are going in a really interesting path when it comes down to the multiverse, or when it comes down to kind of like street level superheroes, like you said, with Moon Knight, or with like the new Captain America. And so like it's just even in regards to like other segments, like with Loki, because overall I think my theory is that the main villain that is going to be like the next level Thanos is going to be Kane the Conqueror. And we might have already seen Kane the Conqueror, because they did not say outright that he's Kane the Conqueror, but at least he called himself a conqueror. But they are saying that his name is He Who Remains in Loki. But do you think he's the main big bad going forward?
Either him or a variant of him. He mentioned all of his different variants. I think that wasn't by accident. I think that's going to play into a big part of it eventually down the road here. I'm not sure. I mean, everyone wants Mephisto. I still don't know if Mephisto is going to happen. Who knows? I definitely bit into it during WandaVision, but then I let that die off pretty quick. It'd be really cool if it was Kang, though. I think that the issue that the MCU is going to have with their next big bad is it is going to be whoever it is going to be compared to Thanos. So I think they have to do a very careful job of crafting a story and building this guy, making him seem this unstoppable. Like they're going to have to do a good job, but I think we can all put our trust in Feige at this point.
And just to close things out, hey Kyle, is that Mjolnir in your necklace?
Oh yeah, I got Mjolnir. It's also inscribed with what Odin says to it before he throws it to Earth in Thor 1.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I was all like, is that Thor's hammer?
Yeah, one of my favorite artifacts, I guess you could call it, from the MCU. Don't know why, just super cool.
Yeah, well, again, thank you guys so much for being part of this. And everyone, you can find these guys either on like here on YouTube or through any platform of podcasts. You can find them on like Apple Podcast or Anchor, or even like anything that is like podcast related. But yeah, you guys, I really appreciate that you took your time to just kind of like for us to talk Marvel. Like this is just like a full on nerdy conversation, and I love it.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It's been a real blast. It was the last time we collab together and do it. Like you mentioned earlier, both of us were kind of like our first guests on each other's shows to kind of start off our shows, our podcasts, our video, our YouTube channels. And so yeah, it's been real fun to kind of jump back into things and to discuss all things Marvel.
So that was my initial discussion about the Marvel Cinematic Universe and just kind of like all the future projects that is coming out within 2022. And without a doubt, this was a very great conversation that I absolutely enjoyed. And I just want to say thank you so much for watching. If you have not yet done so, please subscribe to my channel, as it really helps me out. Also, please press that like button. But no, don't do the dislike one. That's the bad one. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Keep on drinking coffee, and I will see you guys next time.